I'm Danny Otto. Welcome into another episode of That Recap Show. Now, before we get into the episode, just wanted to issue major spoiler alert. We are going to be going over everything that happened in episode 4 of the Ms. Marvel series. So if you haven't checked that episode out yet, you may want to pause this video, head over to Disney Plus, watch that, and then come back and enjoy the breakdown. Now, with that out of the way, let's start the show.
Poppin' Off presents That Recap Show.
Alright, joining with me to break down everything from episode 4 of the Ms. Marvel series, it's Jon Jon Rico!
Hey, how you doing?
Oh, hey there!
Hey.
Hey. So, episode 4 of Ms. Marvel.
Yeah.
We're over halfway done. I can't believe... I feel like this series is just going really quick. Like, completely in a good way. We haven't had a dragging part or episode so far in this series.
Yeah, no filler whatsoever.
I know, right? I always, like, every episode so far has ended with me going, I could have watched, like, another full episode's worth of content type of thing. Like, and I really like that. I think that goes to show just how really good this series has been so far. I'll jump right in, like, just instant reactions to this episode. I think this was a very important episode with a lot of the information that they gave us, with a lot of stuff that we saw. Obviously, you know, with Kamala traveling to Nani, we were going to have some reveals and stuff like that. But I mean, it just keeps with the theme. As soon as we get something answered, we get more questions. And I think it's been a great theme so far in the series. Don't fix it if it's not broken type of thing. The one thing I do have to mention, though, is it's a napping pillow. It's not a stuffed animal. And that's what I'm going to use from now on. If I ever have a stuffed animal that somebody sees, I'm just going to say it's a napping pillow, not a stuffed animal. But that's all I have as far as references. I just think solid episode. I'm still really, really liking everything in the series. And without giving anything away that we're going to talk about kind of further in this video, I just think we got a lot of really cool reveals and just more questions that I can't wait to find the answers to. But Rico, what were some of your instant reactions from episode 4?
I thought this was the best episode of the season so far, to be honest. We really got a lot in this, if we're being clear. Like there's a lot of information from Nani herself to the new characters, the Red Daggers that we meet, but also we get a lot more insight into, like, once again, the family element of this show is what drives the story forward through, like, the entire 4 episodes so far. I think the fact that it's not just like part of her life, but it's also an important factor into the bigger story that they're telling right now is really cool how they're integrating these little elements. A big thing for me is actually in this episode, we kind of learn why Muniba, Kamala's mother, actually chose to leave her mother in Pakistan, come and choose to get a new life in America and stuff like that, is because her mother was getting so wrapped up in these fantasies, as she was calling it, and it was basically getting her shunned by the neighbors, as she was saying. Like it was affecting her reputation around the people around her. So she had to go and create a new life to get away from the ramifications of the bangle being in her family, basically. Yeah, negative effects on Muniba. And so we got a lot more insight into that finally, which I thought was really cool. Another thing, when Kamala goes to the train station, we finally meet Red Dagger. They have a classic, comic book style intro / fight scene together where they have to banter while they're having a little fight. Which is really cool, like a display of both their abilities. Obviously, Red Dagger being very well skilled with a dagger that has the ability to break Kamala's constructs, which is a very cool little detail there. Like, obviously, with that whole reveal that this organization kind of knows everything that Kamala is kind of seeking these answers to. Obviously, they have kind of the means to be able to handle these kind of situations. So that's kind of cool. More of these little underground, like, kind of agencies / societies that are kind of dealing with extra dimensional stuff within the MCU, which is also always cool to see. But again, like the banter between Red Dagger and Kamala during that fight, like, oh, she's like, oh, what's that, the wardrobe and stuff like that. Like, what would you think I'm from Jersey? What about I'm from Canada? Stuff like that. Like all that's super funny to me. Uh just more of the way I relate Kamala to Peter Parker in the sense, like the way they're kind of treating this character as far as their approach to her. She's definitely kind of the Peter Parker of a newer generation. And you can definitely see in this kind of fight right here, like she's gonna be cracking jokes while she's also gonna be hanging in fights with like worthy adversaries. So that's really, really fun episode for me, Danny.
I absolutely agree. And just to kind of circle back on some of the stuff that you were talking about, I mean, I loved the train station fight scene, and it was
Yeah.
totally like comic book like. Like, I mean, there's plenty of comic books where you have that kind of banter going back and forth during fights, and I think it's to see it in a series and in live action is definitely a good touch type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, I really liked that now we're getting like she's getting, more and more comfortable using her powers. Like that's 2 episodes ago, you wouldn't see her being able to make a whole bunch of stair steps and walking up them like with a surety that they're not gonna like blank out and she's gonna step right through it type of thing. She even saved herself on multiple platforms while she was falling. Like
Yeah.
she's getting much more used to using her powers, which is awesome. Um, and going back even further to some of the stuff you were saying, I thought it was really interesting, and it's all brings back to exactly what your point is of this being like a family MCU series type of thing, because we got to see Kamala's mother interacting with her mother, seeing how they didn't see eye to eye. And it
Hmm.
mirrors how Kamala and her mother don't see eye to eye. And we even have like right after that kind of profound talk between Nani and her daughter, we have Kamala coming home and sitting and kind of laughing and joking around with her own mother type of thing. And we kind of
Yeah.
get
I
to
like that moment.
see, yeah, we get to see kind of that growth of like the older generation doesn't understand like their children basically type of thing. And we're kind of seeing how it doesn't change no matter what. Nani and Kamala's mother don't see eye to eye, and Kamala and her mother don't see eye to eye, and they're all still family, and so they're all still they want the best for everyone no matter what.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this when it comes to Muniba's whole character arc, really, because there's that whole scene with her and Nani where she talks about, she goes like you had your head up in the stars, basically, and goes, I didn't need your stories, basically, like I needed my mother, and you can really see that in the way that she parents Kamala, that she's trying really hard to just be a mother to her, and now when she sees that Kamala's head starting to get into the stars, she's like, oh, I'm starting to see the patterns of the past kind of start to repeat itself, and you see why she wants to resist that for Kamala so much, and it all makes sense for her character now too, and it's really, really powerful arc in the series that I didn't really see coming, and I'm really enjoying that so far.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to get to some big takeaways?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, I'm gonna kick us off. I had a question, kind of going off of Nani and Kamala's mother and Kamala. So we kind of start learning more and more about Kamala and her powers and the other dimension that these powers are originating and where the clandestine are originating and stuff like that. But something interesting was said, and it's that, Kamala's powers are genetic because she has ancestors that are from a different dimension. Wouldn't that mean that if Nani or Kamala's mother put on the bangle, that something would happen with them too? Like that was a question that I had. And legitimately, if you have an answer, totally let me know.
That's a good question, actually, because I was wondering that too. Because there's that whole scene with Kamala and Nani at the beginning of the episode where she just straight up asks about like, why'd you send me the bangle, basically, and then Nani talks about somebody that like he said you were a jinn, like clearly, and like she just flat out says it to her.
Yeah.
But there's no real indicator of Muniba having any of that in her, really. So we don't know if it's like one of those, it skips a generation type deals, something like that. But the way that Nani and Kamala are so similar, it just kind of makes sense that it went from her to Kamala in a sense. Like maybe it's something within them draws the bangle to them, but I'm not 100% sure, to be honest.
Well, I mean that's possible, but also I could see in the situation of where Kamala's mother just wants to reject all of the stories and everything having
Right.
to do with all of that. So she never
That could
even
come full
attempts
circle too.
right, she never even attempts to put on the bangle or anything like that. So we don't know if it skips a generation or if it's just that Kamala's mother just wanted to have nothing to do with it or nothing to do with anything that had to do with those stories that Nani was telling everyone and was talking about type of thing. It's just
Mhm.
I'm very interested to see if that's ever going to come up again, just because like it does have to do with ancestors. So it's a
Right. Yeah.
trait that's being genetically passed down. We know it's not coming from the bangle; it's coming from within, which means the bangle's just unlocking that. Which means that's the key to this power, almost like a mutant gene type of thing, like we're talking about. Like we get into some bigger like things if we have different bloodlines that have this untapped potential for powers basically, and that could
Right.
just be like a now mutants exist type of thing. Like it's just really interesting. It was one of the things I definitely wanted to point out because I had that question about it. I mean, the only other really big takeaway that I had from this episode was just that I thought it was really cool that we kind of find more out, not a ton of reveals about Kamala's powers, but just more so that she is basically manipulating the actual stuff from the other dimension. And that's
Right.
where,
The hard light. I think that's
yeah,
what she calls it. Yeah.
but that hard light is basically her manipulating the energy from that other dimension that we can't
Yeah.
see type of thing.
Right. Yeah.
And so that
Very
was
Green Lantern-y,
yeah.
like the way, yeah, how they treat it in a sense.
Right, and I thought that was a really cool reveal, and we also get, I mean, the reveal of like how this other dimension kind of is intertwined with ours, and how there are plenty of other dimensions that are kind of around and existing. We just can't really detect or see them. I wonder if that's going to come into play, maybe not in this series, but just the future of the MCU in general, type of thing. Is talking about other dimensions kind of stacked all next to each other, and if one of them, breaches the other, could we get like an incursion type of situation, but on a different kind of level? I'm just really interested in seeing where these things could end up going. But I can always talk about this for forever because we don't know where any of this stuff is actually going to turn up later. But
Right.
Rico, what were some of your big takeaways from episode 4?
Yeah, so the one of the first things is one of the things I loved about this episode was the fact that when Kamala's out and about in Karachi, like away from her mom and her cousins and stuff like that, she puts on her mask that Bruno made for her because she's in superhero mode. So she's like, I put on the mask and do my thing. So of course she's walking around the train station doing that. That's when she runs into the red daggers and all that. Um, but of course that all leads to ends up being a good interaction for her because of course she gets introduced to these people who actually want to help her and end up revealing more about the clandestines as you said, like kind of like more about what their whole deal is and stuff like that. While they're training, Wally gives her this material for people. She's like there's history in this fabric. She wears it like in the traditional way at first, but we know eventually that material is going to be woven into her more comic accurate looking suit, which is a really cool little detail. Because I was really wondering where like the materials of her new suit were going to come from. Now, like a little bit more of the pieces are starting to come together, which I think is really cool. But so at the end of the episode, when the clandestines like jump Kamala and Wally and all them in their base, where they get into this big fight. They go through this big chase throughout the whole city. Really awesome chase scene, which I thought was really cool. You love a good Marvel chase scene throughout the streets. I think they always do those really well, in my opinion. But at the end, of course, rest in peace, Waleed, first of all, because he went out defending Red Dagger and Kamala. So, props to him, went out a hero. But at the end, Najma is just like kind of, she's had enough. And she goes and she tries to get one last go at Kamala and she puts her hands up and it gets the bangle. What ends up happening is you start seeing the walls rip in the, like, almost like in reality, is in a sense, like in what's going on here. And then all of a sudden, we're in the past. We're in the partition at the train station that her and her Nani are talking about earlier, that last train that got out of there. But Kamala is there, like physically now. Like she's not just looking at a vision. It seems like she's there. Like she time traveled. It seems like. So what the heck is going on? Like
Yeah.
what did that strike from Najma to the bangle do that put Kamala in this situation? And now what's going to happen to get her back? Like so. we were talking about Muniba and Nani and the bangle stuff that like one's got to wear one. Maybe they both have to wear one to get her back. Like because of course if the bangles need to be used to get the clandestine back to where they want to go, maybe they can be used to bring her back to norm like the current time basically. Um so that's like again, so as many questions as this show answers, it just keeps posing more, which is just crazy. Like
Yeah.
I'm just loving the adventure that they're taking us on. So like again, probably my favorite episode of the season so far.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, going back to what you were saying, there is a content creator that I saw on TikTok today talking about episode 4 and saying, what if it's like a time loop type of thing? And what if, no one really knows how Nani got onto the train type of
Mhm.
thing? What if it's Kamala had to save little child Nani to get on the train and then is
Ooh,
given the second bangle that and there in that situation, and that's why the second bangle isn't found because it's in that time loop
I
type of
like
thing.
that.
It's a crazy theory, and the only thing I could think after I saw that content creator make that video was Back to the Future and Marty McFly just saying,
Whoa, this is heavy. There's that word again, heavy. Why are things so heavy in the future? Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational pull?
it is like when you start entering
A
time
photo,
travel in
fade the
general.
fading photo
Yeah,
basically. And
when
yeah.
when you start entering time travel into the equation and time loops and stuff like that, but I mean, it's just crazy enough that that could be it. Like, and that's why the second bangle hasn't been in play because it's been in this time loop waiting for Kamala. It goes back to also the inscription: "What you seek is seeking you," type of thing.
Mhm.
So what if like that's why that the first bangle brought her to that situation to find the second bangle
How
to
wild
also.
would it be if because like of Endgame when they do that whole Back to the Future joke, if they end up doing a Back to the Future style plot later on, like that would be pretty wild of them to do. And it's
Yeah,
just like, yeah, that would actually be really cool.
it's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hope that that comes true just because I think it's so crazy. It's just smart enough to work type of thing. All right, but do you want to get into some predictions?
Yeah, you know it.
Awesome. I'm gonna kick us off this time. It's not even that I have a real prediction. It's just it's almost like another big takeaway where
Yeah.
while we're getting all of this kind of new information about the dimension that the clandestine are from and the dimension where Kamala's powers are kind of originating from, we have kind of this moment of clarity where the leader of Red Dagger or Red Daggers. I mean, I'm not sure if we're talking a society, if we're just talking about his that was his mentor type of thing in that situation. But anyway, he basically says, if Thor showed up in the middle of Pakistan or India, they would call him a Jinn too type
Right.
of thing. And so really that gives us the clandestine probably aren't Jinn. They're just visitors from another dimension that in our dimension they have powers. And the only way to kind of for us to explain that is that they were a different creature or like what we would say like in the Thor movies where they said, like Thor and Loki were looked at as like little g gods on earth
Yeah.
type of thing in past cultures and stuff like that. So I just think it was a really interesting thing to add in there to basically allude to that these are going to be just visitors from a different dimension. And I think that's really cool to kind of have that there to kind of explain to us that like we don't know their their origin yet type of thing. And
Right.
it's like you said, it's another question that like we thought we already had the answer to, but now it could be even more interesting because we don't know who could end up being of that same dimension basically.
Right.
We could just be seeing a small group from that dimension and there could be huge implications for the future of the MCU with that dimension and stuff like that. Rico, what are some of your predictions moving forward after episode 4?
Yeah, to kind of add on to your point there, the The Clandestine could also be looked at as the Jinn, kind of like the same way that the Eternals are looked at as other mythical figures throughout history as
Right.
well. So it just could be like, they're Jinn like, but they're not like, the actual Jinn that they, the people think that they are.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good point. That also makes me wonder if their home is like in another dimension within Earth, or if they're like, I like that Wally said that they're from another realm. So, and of course, there's realms within the Thor movie universe too. So they could just be from somewhere out in the cosmos, which also could tie into Kamala's Captain Marvel 2 journey. Could play into.
Yeah.
So going into my, kind of like what you said, mine's not necessarily a prediction, really. It kind of is, but isn't. But really, in this episode, we got to see that damage control has their own maximum security prison, that's a pretty cool kind of a little thing to learn there. That I don't think we've seen this facility before, and
Yeah.
I'm wondering who is locked up in this facility as of right now. Hopefully, someone is, so we can meet them later on. But without really much effort at all, the Clandestine escape from prison, and I found it kind of weird that Cameron gets kind of taken out by the kind of sonic weapon that we've seen in past MCU projects, and then they help him all the way to the exit, and then Najma is like, "Nah, leave him. Like he betrayed us, and now he's got to live with his decision now."
Well,
Like,
because
what?
she definitely still had concern for him because she asked, "Is he okay?" type of
Right.
thing.
She reacted when the officer was being rough with him and stuff like that. So I was like, she's being very back and forth. Like
But
maybe
I
it's
think
the mother thing, of course. Like
right,
she's still got the little unconditional love part from, but at the same time, like
right,
you have to sober, like gotta do what you gotta do.
right.
Uh, but essentially, like it's kind of confirming what we already kind of feel was going to happen, is that Cameron's not really a bad guy.
Right.
He's not going to be someone that was going to be like an adversary to Kamala. I think first of all, Kamala's pulling dudes left and right. She's got Bruno, she's got Cameron, she's got Red Dagger, and they're all looking at her like, "What's up, girl?" And she's like, "Hey, what's up?" And like she's like, like, dude, she's just like, yeah, dude, she's got game. Whatever, what can I say? But you gotta figure that this is all setting the stage for Cameron to kind of be like, kind of help Kamala in the end game here. No pun intended for MCU. But yeah, the fact that he's got clandestine powers, of course, so he's obviously capable of hanging with those people, and now he's got something personal with them. So um obviously now she's got one more ally on her side now. It's gonna kind of even the odds. And they actually took a couple out this episode too. So
Yeah.
even more, this is gonna work out a little bit more in her favor, I think, this going forward. So really excited for the last two episodes. And one more thing I did like about this episode too is they started integrating more of the like Urdu text message like into the episode, like the previously on Miss Marvel thing, as it's just an Urdu writing, and then like the Miss Marvel tags, they go back and forth between
Yeah.
the two, and I thought that was really cool. So I'm like, oh, I'm really liking the little things that they're adding on. Like all the little details in this show are kind of what are like the cherry on top for me. But the story itself is just fantastic.
Absolutely. And that, you just made me think of another thing that I totally wanted to mention. And this last thing, promise everybody watching, but I loved how I loved kind of just visuals in general, like you're
Mhm.
talking about in this episode. But when Kamala and Nani are talking in Nani's hiding place, I think is what she
Yeah.
says when she finds her, but they're outside and just the landscape and the
Oh,
sky,
it's
everything
beautiful.
looks so great. But then to add on top of that, you're talking about little things, is we get a text message in the sky
Yeah.
type of
All the
thing.
text
And
messages are always great.
we go back to, the first and second episode when they were doing that in street signs and in neon
Mhm.
signs and stuff like that. I just thought it was a perfect little touches, just like you said, those little details in there in all of the episodes, but in that particular scene, I just thought was great. And yeah, I mean the visuals just in general are awesome for this episode and all the episodes. But
All the shows have been really well shot.
right, right. Just some of these visuals from this episode have just been really cool,
Yeah.
and it's the scenery and stuff like that. It's been awesome. But anyway, That's what we think. Let us know in the comments below. What did you think of episode 4? And what do you think's gonna happen over the course of the next 2 last episodes of season 1? We do not have that much more left of this series before it's over. I can't believe it's almost over. Anyway, and as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to hear about all of our video releases. Bye, everybody!